On paper, the GR86 is exactly what enthusiasts have been begging for. A simple, affordable rear-wheel drive coupe that's practical enough to be used every day, most of the year. However, with widely available, more utilitarian, fun-focused cars out there, I'm going to try to answer a question. Is the little Toyo Baru still worth it? If you enjoy fun, detailed car content without the fluff, consider subscribing and hitting the bell for notifications. The Toyota GR86 is mostly new for 2022. Yes, it rides on the same platform as in years past. However, they have added additional bracing up front, more comprehensive chassis reinforcements around back, more structural adhesives, and more rigid mounting points for the suspension. For 2023, changes are slight. It's $200 more expensive, and there's a new 10th anniversary edition. 860 of those will exist in total, and this spec will get an exclusive orange color, little accent stripes, special matte wheels, and a more pronounced catback exhaust system. You will have the same two main trims for 2023. You're just going to have the base and premium trim. Right next to me is the premium. So that means I'm going to have steering responsive headlights. You also get standard LED daytime running lights and headlights. And if you're looking for a new Toyota, check out the well-established Royal South Toyota in Bloomington, Indiana, the dealership that let me try out the GR86 today. Royal South usually has an interesting inventory, plus their staff is friendly and knowledgeable. Really, the big takeaway from standing at the front of this thing is just how low it is. When it comes to the engine, you're going to have a new 2.4 liter flat 4. It's the FA24 engine from Subaru. This Boxer unit has the D4S system, so it's direct injection and port fuel injection, which means that it'll keep the intake valves clean over the long run. Plus, it makes 228 horsepower, an increase of, I believe, 23 over the previous car. The more important story, though, is the torque. Oh yeah, it only makes 184 pound-feet, not groundbreaking. But the bigger story is that now it peaks at 3,700 RPMs instead of 6,600, which made the previous car's power band feel very peaky and it wasn't all that usable. Whereas in here, you have way better response at basically every RPM, plus more thrust overall. This is going to come hooked up to a 6-speed manual transmission or a 6-speed automatic, which unfortunately, I do not have the stick today, but at least I'll get a unique perspective here. The transmissions are mostly carryover. The only difference is a minor tweak there in the final drive ratio. It's going to be taller now for the new car. And I think this was to offset maybe some of the gas mileage hit that they were going to see with the larger engine. And really, it is kind of comically inefficient for how small this car is. The automatic's taller gearing will grant better highway mileage, but 22 combined for the stick means that the manual WRX, which has the turbocharged version of this engine, full-time all-wheel drive, and weighs considerably more, gets the same gas mileage. And they both empty your pockets for premium fuel too. At least all GR86s will come with a limited slip differential as standard. So now I'll shut off the AC, put it in track mode, and see what we can get 0 to 60 wise. So my 7.2 second run to 60 doesn't sound earth-shattering, but again, this thing is not so much about maximum performance. It's about engine response. And that's where this has improved, except when you are in excess of 60 miles per hour, you might start to want a turbocharged engine. It just kind of runs out of gas. But I'd rather have it be this way and a little bit cheaper than overcomplicate things. The automatic, when left to its own devices, is not afraid to downshift and goes about its business smoothly. The manual's more aggressive gearing will give the GR86 more guts, but the absence of that big torque dip of the previous cars means the engine finally contributes to the fun. Using the manual mode in the auto will give you back some of the entertainment. The paddle shifters work okay. It's not a dual clutch automatic, it doesn't fool you into thinking it is one. It rev matches well and the paddles feel chunky, and this adds to the video game sensation that is mainly driven by the piped in engine sound that makes you feel like you're in Gran Turismo 4. It seems like it's most aggressive when you're at the lower speeds. When there's not very much road noise, it becomes very obvious under harder acceleration. Around the side of the 86, I think we have a much more dramatic design than in years past. Of course, looks are all subjective, so let me know your own thoughts in the comment section, but it's quite a bit more swoopy, and I love this character line down here at the bottom where the rocker panel is. I love the wide body look around back, and the duckbill spoiler that will come with the premium trim definitely finishes out the look nicely. But let me know what your own thoughts are. Premium specs will also have 18-inch wheels, whereas base cars will get 17s. But all GR86s will have gloss black mirror caps to give you sporty visibility. Around the rear, there's not too many things to talk about other than the dual exhausts, the standard LED taillights, and a trunk release is standard on the exterior of the trunk lid. All cars will have a smart proximity key, but the key itself is actually just a Subaru unit. Speaking of Subaru, this thing also has the road noise of an 05 Forester. With the auto at 65 miles per hour, the engine putters along at 2000 RPM, and wind noise isn't too bad either. It's the tires that begin to sing. This may become a nuisance to some, but the interior does a good job at keeping spirits fairly high. The cabin of the GR86 has a familiar shape, very reminiscent of the original Scion FRS that came out in 2013. Yet they improved it where it matters. These giant vents here on either side look like big jet engines, and I love how you interact with them. The steering wheel, while basic, looks fun, and I like the little GR logo on there. It adds a nice pop of color, as does the push button start, which is standard on all cars. The shift knob too, is even on this automatic version, it does look nice. I don't appreciate how they try to fool you into thinking it's a manual with, you know, even how it sits at an angle there, like, you know, it were to be sitting in like 5th gear right now. It is kind of interesting though when you shift. It makes this very hollow but kind of loud thud. And this very analog experience continues elsewhere with even just the HVAC controls. You got these big toggles down here. You have a nice layout for your standard dual zone automatic climate control with the screens built into the dials themselves. It's a classy way of doing things. What isn't classy is this 8-inch touchscreen. While it doesn't look like a blatant copy of Subaru's Starlink system, it does use the same graphics and font. Response time is okay. The colors are kind of washed out. Resolution is fine. I did find it to get buggy during some tasks. Thankfully, you have 6 speakers standard on the base to help you forget about that. With a small cabin, that should do a good job of giving you a surround sound experience, something prevalent with the 8 speakers in my premium. I do wish for better sound quality, but it can get loud without distorting. For people that want more boom, a subwoofer can be accessorized after the fact. At least it has Apple CarPlay and Android Auto as standard. What they knocked out of the park was the virtual gauge cluster here. While it's not the most techy out there, I like how it's kind of shaped as a boxer engine with the crankshaft in the middle there. And then when you put it in track mode, you know, it pulls up a really cool tachometer, which really places an emphasis there from 4,000 to 7,500 RPMs. It's a fun, engaging way to display all the information that you need. And it doesn't really go over the top with information or configurability. The whole interior doesn't go over the top in anything. The panel fitment and sturdiness feels good for 30 grand, but the materials aren't going to impress anybody. Really, the nicest appointment you're gonna get is heated seats on the premium trim. But while we're talking about these seats, I do find them to be quite comfortable. I just wish that they had like some sort of lumbar adjustment. At least you do have a tilt and telescoping steering wheel, and this is the ultra suede and leather material, but if you go with the base car, you'll just have cloth. And I like that they put the suede not just on the seats, plus some nice rest points here for my elbows, very soft and plush. Storage in here is respectable. I like how they designed the door cards. You can actually fit a 40-ounce hydro flask in this one, which is quite impressive. And it even retains a glove box. For 2023, nothing on the interiors changed outside of the inclusion of a badge for the special edition. when it comes to space, I am 6'3", and in the front seat, I am comfortable. I have a narrow build, so, you know, if you're a little bit wider, I think these seats are just gonna be tight for you, and really the whole car is gonna be tight for you. But if you're just tall, rest assured you'll have enough headroom and legroom. Whereas the only people I would subject to an extended period of time in the back seat would be the most vile of war criminals or the smallest of children. Really, even if I drive like I'm, you know, like 5'5", my head is into the ceiling and my legs have literally nowhere to go. And typically this is where I would then try to hop into the trunk of the BR, and typically this, I'm gonna do it. The trunk of the Subaru Toyota 86, GR86 is, well, actually more accommodating than I thought, even with the back seats still in place. And if you fold them down, Toyota constantly touts that you can fit 4 additional wheels in here, which is great for a track day. But oddly enough, the rear seat does not have a split fold. It's not like you're gonna use the seat anyway, but I haven't seen that before. As far as a grocery getter goes, this is okay. It's a long space and a respectably wide one for the given footprint. It's just not very tall. If you're comparing this to any like muscle car, this is going to be blown away. But if you're looking at a Mazda MX-5, this should be the better city runabout. But most likely you're not buying this as a grand tour. You're buying this as something that you can enjoy on a back road. And this does it, even if you're on imperfect, more tight roads. But I've already driven this a couple times now. Oh, it's just so much fun. And it is incredibly well controlled. What I like most about it, even on this bad road, is that the steering is communicating everything to me. Yes, this doesn't feel as sure-footed as some of the heavier fun vehicles around this price point, like a GTI, Civic Si, WRX, but it tells me everything that's happening and it makes it a very fun experience. And then when you have it on nicer roads, it just gets even better. Once you get this thing onto some better pavement, even a little bit higher speeds, body motion and roll is still very well kept. The steering is just so much more natural feeling than what I've gotten from the WRX and a lot of these other cars that are supposed to be more fun focused. This just comes off uber predictable, has great weighting. It's still kind of on the lighter side, which you'd want given that this is a smaller car. It feels appropriate. You can make corrections mid-corner and it doesn't punish you too much for it. Push it to the limits and its tendency for rear-end rotation will reveal itself, but with the Michelin Pilot Sport 4 tires, the limits are quite high. The base car still gets summer performance tires too. The BRZ has a different sway bar setup and other rear-end tweaks make it a little less tail-happy if that's what you want. And the precision makes the car feel alive too. The steering ratio is the same as the Subaru WRX and Forester, but the response on center keeps it alert, and it does so without coming off darty somehow. The brakes are also very affirming but easy to modulate. It's a very forgiving, pure experience, and that was something that you had in the old car, and they've just made it a little bit better. And really that describes a lot of this vehicle. In some ways it is a big leap, like in the power band, but in others, it's just the details. So I really appreciate the effort from Toyota and Subaru here. And while my Tester is fun to drive, buying an automatic GR86 is like buying a Big Mac without the special sauce. You get the substance, but miss out on the full experience. When I drove the 2020 car, the clutch was nice and short. It offered great communication. It had a notchy shifter, but I still found the whole experience very satisfying. And supposedly they even improved upon that feel for this new car, and it seems like it's getting very positive remarks. So really, if you can drive a manual or you're willing to learn, you get the manual 86. Now on some really appalling roads that I've been driving on for a little bit now, the GR86 is more forgiving than I would have anticipated. For me, this is easily comfortable enough to be a daily driver. And what I really like about it is that over these roads, it still feels taut and controlled. If you hit something large, yes, it will kind of crash through the cabin there, but that limit is considerably higher than what I was thinking it would be for a car like this. Another big pro to the GR86 is that this is based on an old platform that had a pretty good past. The most common failures after the initial years of the previous generation appeared to be fuel pump and battery related. Oil seepage from various parts of the engine was also a concern, as was throwout bearing failure and some other more miscellaneous problems like Bluetooth bugs. The most serious issue came down to valve springs in later years on select cars, but that shouldn't be a worry on the new model. Of course, this has many fresh components, so time is going to have to tell, but it seems like reliability was a priority here. Toyota even outfits D4S on these to keep the intake valves clean, so if you're looking for a dependable, fun car, I'd recommend the GR86. And safety-wise, if you get a manual transmission, you will not have adaptive cruise or any of the crash prevention stuff. If you're buying a 3-pedal GR86, I feel like most of those consumers aren't going to care too much, especially given that this has never been a family car. But it is nice to have some of those convenience features. At least you do have blind spot monitoring. More importantly, the GR86 aced every single crash test, and as a whole, it absolutely nailed its objective. Without a doubt in my mind, if I were looking for fun at 30 grand, I would buy this with 3 pedals. Admittedly, the MX-5 does have its own argument, but this would be much easier to use daily. Its agile rear-wheel drive nature also makes it better for track use than most of the sport sedans and hatches on the market. But this doesn't answer my original question. In the midst of all of these practical, fun cars, does this make sense? This response will vary from person to person, but it's a resounding yes for me. Something I couldn't say about the old car. I test drove that aforementioned 2020 model to potentially buy it, not review it. But I walked away because while it was great, its practical shortcomings were not redeemed by the good handling and gearbox alone. This new car fixed the previous engine's insufficient grunt, made the interior more appealing, and increased the comfort of the car without muddying its capability in corners. If I were in the same position as I was back then, I would be searching for one now. The only thing that would make me think twice is premium fuel with this kind of gas mileage. If you want a fun, affordable coupe that won't beat you up for driving it daily, the GR86 is about as good as it gets. And if you think it still needs a turbo, you're missing the point. Thanks for watching. Hit the like button if you enjoyed the video to help me defeat the YouTube algorithm. Subscribe and hit the bell for more. And thank you to my loyal Patreons. I'll catch you in the next one.